Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Imagine just stepping out of your front door, right? But instead of your usual sidewalk, you are suddenly facing the vast open ocean. You can literally smell the sharp salt air. Or maybe you're standing at the edge of an incredibly dense, tangled forest, and your job, you have to figure out exactly how many animals are out there and how well they're actually surviving. I'm your host, and today we are stepping into the muddy boots of a field ecologist. We're going to explore how scientists actually know what's happening out there in the wild. We'll look at the ingenious tools, the clever math, and the fascinating detective work it takes to track nature's most elusive creatures. So, here is the ultimate ecologist's dilemma. How do you count what absolutely refuses to be seen? If you've ever tried to count a darting school of fish or birds constantly fluttering through the forest canopy, you know the frustration. Nature is dynamic. Animals constantly move around, they hide from predators, and quite frankly, they're hiding from us. Because to them, we're just another predator. You can't exactly just ask them to line up for a census. This brings us to a really foundational truth in our line of work. Ecologists cannot count all the individuals in a population if the organisms move too quickly or are hidden from view. It's just a fact. Since we can't do a standard head count of every single animal directly, we have to rely on a clever mix of ecological field tactics and honestly some incredibly satisfying mathematics. We basically have to become nature's detectives. Which leads us to Section 1, the mark recapture method. This is absolutely our primary tool in the field for estimating population sizes without having to physically lay eyes on every single animal. It's a brilliant little workaround for the limits of human observation. And the logic? It's incredibly elegant, working in 3 simple steps. First, we go out into the field and safely capture a random sample of our target animal. We tag or mark them, we'll call this number S, and we release them right back into the wild. Step 2, we wait. We give them plenty of time to completely mix back in with the hidden, unmarked population. Then, step 3, we go back out and capture a second sample of animals. We'll call this total number N. Finally, we count how many in that second group already have our mark from the first trip, that's X. By just looking at the ratio of marked to unmarked animals from that second trip, we can actually unlock the total population size. Let's see this in action in Section 2, the dolphin detective work. To really visualize this, let's travel down to the coast of New Zealand, near the Banks Peninsula, to track the endangered Hector's dolphins. Now, obviously, you can't exactly catch a wild dolphin in a net very easily, so researchers used cameras instead. A photograph of a unique, distinct dorsal fin became the mark. And here's how the math plays out in the real world. N equals S times N divided by X. Let's plug in our real dolphin data. Out on the boats during their first trip, researchers photographed 180 distinct dorsal fins. That's our first group, S. Then they waited, they let the dolphins swim, let them mix around, and they went back out a few weeks later. On that second trip, they encountered 44 dolphins in total. That's N. Out of those 44, they recognized 7 familiar fins from their very first trip. That's our recaptured number, X. So we take 180, multiply it by 44, and divide by 7. And here is the incredibly satisfying payoff of our math. We get an estimated population size of 1,131 Hector's dolphins at Banks Peninsula. It's brilliant, right? Without having to somehow corral over 1,000 wild dolphins, field ecologists could accurately gauge the size of an endangered population just by snapping some photos and doing a little algebra. It literally turns the vast, unknowable ocean into a solvable puzzle. But hold on, there is a catch. For this math to actually work, nature has to play fair. We call these the strict assumptions of the mark recapture method. First, every single animal has to have an equal probability of being caught, so no trap-happy or trap-shy animals allowed. Second, the marked animals have to mix completely evenly back into the rest of the population. And third, the population needs to be closed during the study. That basically means no new births, no sudden deaths, and no animals just deciding to pack up and migrate away. Now, obviously, nature rarely cooperates perfectly, but if we can meet these conditions, our math acts like a powerful flashlight in the dark. Moving right along to Section 3, Beyond Counting, Animal Survival. Because, counting the dolphins or the birds is really only step 1. As field ecologists, it's just not enough to know how many animals are out there today. We urgently need to understand if these populations are actually surviving over time. How long do they live? When exactly are they most vulnerable? To figure that out, we build what's called a life table. Consider a group of female Belding's ground squirrels living way up in the chilly, high altitudes of the Sierra Nevada. We start with a cohort, which is just a group of individuals all born at the exact same time.
And we track them relentlessly from birth until the very last one dies. We document exactly how many are alive at the start of year 1, year 2, year 3, and so on. It takes these otherwise static numbers and turns them into a dramatic, high-stakes story of survival over time.
Which brings us to Section 4, the 3 curves of life. We can actually take that life table data and plot it onto a graph to create survivorship curves. These curves basically group nature into 3 broad survival strategies, based on when a species faces the absolute highest risk of death during their lifespans. On one extreme, we have type 1 survivorship. Think of humans or elephants. We have very low death rates early in life, mainly because we invest massively in caring for just 1 or 2 offspring. Most of us survive well into old age, which is where the curve finally drops steeply. But contrast that with type 3 survivorship at the other extreme. Think of oysters or marine invertebrates. They release literally millions of eggs into a harsh, unforgiving ocean. They provide 0 parental care, so you see this massive, catastrophic early death rate. But for the lucky fraction of a percent that actually survive and grow a hard shell, their curve flattens right out and they can live a very long time. And right in the middle, we have type 2 survivorship. This is where our Belding's ground squirrels live. For them, survival is just a constant, unpredictable game of roulette. Their death rate is essentially a straight line heading downwards. It really doesn't matter if they are 1-year-old or 5 years old, they face the exact same constant threat of predators, disease, and harsh winter elements every single year of their lives. No breaks. Let's tie this all together in Section 5, the big ecological picture. So you might be wondering, why don't those surviving animals just keep multiplying until they literally cover the earth? Well, because as populations grow and crowd together, something eventually has to give. We call these density-dependent factors. They step in like a natural emergency brake to violently increase death rates or suddenly lower birth rates. When an area gets too crowded, you see fierce competition for food and space. Infectious diseases can spread like wildfire through a dense population. Predators suddenly notice this massive all-you-can-eat buffet. And in some extreme cases, toxic wastes even start to build up. These are the natural brakes that keep any single species from completely taking over an ecosystem. Which leaves us with a deeply provocative final thought to end this explainer. We've spent our time today looking through the ecologist's lens at wild dolphins and ground squirrels. But what if we turn that lens around? The human population has grown explosively over the last few centuries. We share this exact same planet, and ultimately, we are subject to the exact same biological rules. So I ask you, what factors will eventually limit the carrying capacity and survival of our own human population? Will it be food, fresh water, disease, or will we consciously manage our own footprint? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions and keep exploring the wild world around you.